Hi, I'm with Zach Button from Spurrell and Associates, and what we're talking about today is how to know if your accountant is a CPA. So, Zach, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Right on. So, Zach, tell me about your journey here to the firm. You've been going to Grant MacEwan, just about done your 4-year degree, one course away or so, or?
Yeah, a couple courses away from finishing off my commerce degree and majoring in accounting, and then hopefully going into that CPA program as soon as I can. Right
on. So you're well on your way to becoming a CPA.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. So what I want to introduce first is our main statistic that we bring up a lot is 50% of all businesses fail within 5 years. Another statistic that I like to bring forward though is 82% of business owners would score less than 70% on a basic financial literacy test. And the reason why we know this is Intuit, the maker of QuickBooks. They actually tested business owners on very basic items, what's involved in the balance sheet, what's an accrual, how to improve cash flow, and 82% of business owners got a score of 70% or less. So knowing if your accountant is a CPA, it's really important actually, because you're going to rely on that person to make business decisions. And I think that failure rate is tied to the financial literacy and the quality of the advice that you're getting. And a quote that I'd like to bring up is, if you think if it's expensive to hire a professional, wait till you see how much it costs to hire an amateur. And the guy who said that was Red Adair. And it was interesting. I had to look it up because I've heard that quote a long time, and I was like, well, who actually said that, right? This guy specializes in extinguishing and capping oil wells when they're on fire. Now, I'm sure you could probably get a regular firefighter in there and they could, cap the well eventually. But, think of how much oil and how much resources we literally burned up before you actually got the job done. In the story that I get, and, unfortunately, this isn't an anomaly, but, recently we had a client who came in. They had an undesignated accountant. And they thought CRA owed them $23,000 in tax. They thought they were in line for a refund of $23,000. Now, unfortunately, when then they started getting notices from CRA saying, we need you to pay $23,000. And their bookkeeper picked it up that it was an anomaly. The referral came in, and the unfortunate story is the client actually does owe $23,000 in taxes. But he had no idea because the accountant actually made incorrect entry. This was an undesignated account. Is there specific questions that you think people out there, really don't understand and they really need to know in order to, go through this process and understand, is my accountant fit?
Main thing is, can someone without professional designation start their own firm?
Yeah, and that's the thing that people don't understand a lot is they actually can. You can just literally hang out a shingle tomorrow and say, I am an accountant. Now, you can't call yourself a chartered accountant or a chartered professional accountant, but you can call yourself so-and-so, Smith and Associates or a Johnson and Company, and you put up a nice fancy letterhead and, you build out the office, and all of a sudden, I have an accounting firm. And unfortunately, what happens is the average person doesn't always realize, when they go into business and they walk into someone's office, is this person actually a chartered professional accountant? Mm-hmm. And they just make the assumption that, well, they must be because there must be a rule in place. But unfortunately, as long as you don't call yourself a CPA or a chartered professional accountant, you can start up your own accounting firm. And, a lot of people get, unfortunately, lulled into that false sense of security that their accountant really is a CPA.
I know personally, it's always been a question, and I know everyone that's in school and everything is always wondering how long it does actually take to become a CPA.
So it's about a 7-year process, start to finish. Assuming and that's if you complete everything all the way through and go through as quickly as possible. So there's really, the first component is your undergraduate degree. So you have to have a university degree. This is the conventional path. There's a couple other paths, but either way, it's going to take you 7 years. But the conventional path, you get a 4-year university degree, and then you're going to article at an accounting office for 3 years. So you're actually going to, practice in this. So it's not just getting a university degree. There's a 4-year kind of theoretical component and 3-year practical component as well.
Yeah. Just with the learning everything with it and the articling. How does that program replicate the difficulties that you would experience outside after you say you do get your designation?
Yeah, so it's important to understand what's involved in it too. So I'll answer that first, and I'll go into the how it replicates it. So what happens is you're still doing coursework. The coursework is delivered a little bit differently. It's not a classroom setting, so the coursework that you're doing is online. So really, you're working full time at a job, 40 to 50 hours a week, especially if you're in tax time, and now you're doing courses. In addition to your regular work, so which is good because you're still getting some advanced theoretical knowledge, the things that you didn't get in university, but now you're actually getting some practical experience and seeing that theoretical knowledge put into place. It's one thing to learn about how the Income Tax Act is written and how things are supposed to be calculated. As you're seeing, working here, it's a completely different story sometimes on how it's applied from CRA and how we actually get to that end result. So it's one thing in the theory, but how it's applied. So the articling process really, it continues on that theoretical knowledge, but you're working full time at an approved training office. And so now how that actually replicates the decision-making process is really, it's a grind. That's one of the main things that it replicates, is it really is a grind. So when you're in school, all you really have to do is study for your tests, and most people, when they're in school, they don't have a lot of other responsibility. But life starts to catch up with you, and all of a sudden your responsibilities grow outside of work. So the CPA program is pretty good on replicating that, because now you're holding down this full-time job, and you still have to be able to perform on a testing situation, on a theoretical knowledge testing situation. Which is very much what it's like in public practice. It's not that you can get the right answer on one day on a test where it's prepared to, but you have to be able to get the right answers consistently day after day as clients come in, and you really have that time pressures of life and public practice weighing on you. So the CPA program is pretty good at replicating that real life decision making pressure, where you have to be making good decisions under time pressure consistently, day after day. The other thing that the CPA program probably does a little better than the university programs is they're very case driven. So that even the tests that they're asking you, they're very much, so and so has a business and they have these scenarios. What's the items that they should be concerned with. Rather, in a university testing situation, normally it's asking you a specific question on one issue, not showing you a case and asking you to dissect all of the issues and asking you to prioritize the issues as well too. So I think that's where it does a good job in replicating the decision-making process.
With all of the articling and school and everything like you talked about just there, what is the pass rate of those CPA?
Yeah, it's I don't think the old CA program and the new CPA program, I don't think they actually care to publish the pass rate. I think it would be lower than everybody expects. You can get details on the exams, for example, on module 1, module 2, because these guys are going through different modules over the 3 years. And they'll show you the pass and failure rate for those. But what was really at question is how many people graduate with an accounting degree and get all the way to the end with a CPA. That's a little bit difficult to trace through in the stats that they actually publish. I would suggest that it's lower than they like to admit, and I would suggest that it's probably about 50%. There's a lot of really smart people who come out of university who just they fall victim to that war of attrition. Now instead of just doing school, they have to work full time and continue to learn. And some people just don't adjust well to the delivery method too, where in university it's very directed. You have a professor who sits up at the front of the class and tells you what to expect, and now you're basically giving assignments and some resources and say, figure it out and give us an answer with minimal decision making guidance. So I would suggest that although it's not on an aggregate basis published, it's only published by module, but in my anecdotal experience, I would say it's about 50%. So it's a tough grind.
On another note, you also talked about, is your accountant a CPA? How would a non-designated firm overplay their undergraduate degree?
I mean, sometimes you walk into these offices and they have their accounting degree. They have their BCom on the wall,
Yep.
and then they say, yeah, I was an accounting major at University of Alberta or Grant MacEwan, and the average person sees that and they see the certificate on the wall, and they think that's all you need. But I mean, as you know, I found out, and as you're starting to find out as you go through, the actual application of those rules are school. It's only the start of the preparation. You're really not prepared at that point to truly be in that decision making role. So I think they play off different. Their undergrad degree a lot of times as that was the finish point, when really that was probably the starting point, or maybe the halfway point at most. So I think that's one that people get caught up on. They see the certificate on the wall and they think it's a CPA. There should be 2 certificates on the wall, one for their university degree and one for completion of their CPA.
Yeah. With that, do you see a big difference between starting the CPA program and finishing it? Like, is there the knowledge base there that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, and that's one, and I feel it's a little bit misleading. And I've heard people, recite that. I've heard, non-designated accountants say, in the CPA program, when really what they mean is they started the CPA program and quite honestly they flunked out.
Yeah.
And they'll play off that experience in the CPA program as if that's the be all end all, but there is a huge difference between starting the CPA program and finishing the CPA program. I go back to the 50% completion rate. So
yeah.
Do you want the person who's advising you to be the one who flunked out? So just because you start hearing about the CPA program, the real question is, did you finish the CPA program? Are you designated? It's got to be very precise, because the difference is leaps and bounds. It's the guy who played in the NHL rather than the guy who went and saw an NHL game at one point. So I think it's different. Yeah.
With that, how would you be able to tell if you walked into the firm? Like, I know you said that the BCom is on the wall and you would look for that CPA, but what are some other quick ways to tell if your firm is CPA?
Yeah, there's some formal ways you can go through the Institute of Chartered Professional Accountants of Alberta, but I would suggest that 99% of the time you can get your information you need on Google. So what you want to do is you go on Google and you Google the firm that you're thinking about. And what you're looking for are a couple of really key identifiers. So first of all, does it say Chartered Professional Accountants in the firm name? There's a couple of other things that you want to look for that are going to denote that this person is designated. Does it say CPA or CA? Or if it says professional corporation, because they're an accountant and they have a professional corporation. In order to get that professional corporation, they had to have provided proof of their professional designation. So you're looking for CPA, CA, CGA, CMA. Those are the 3. There's another designation out there that's called the Registered Public Accountants. That doesn't count. There's a reason why when the 3 designations amalgamated, they didn't let them in. It was too easy of a test. So there's only 3 designations, the old designations that become CPA. So you're looking for, does it say Chartered Professional Accountant? Does it say Chartered Accountant? Does it say one of 3 acronyms? 4, CPA, CA, CMA, or CGA. Those are the 4 applicants that you're looking for. Does it say professional corporation, or does it say LLP? If it says LLP, that will also be a designation of it is a professional corporation that have wound up. Anything else, whether it says and associates or and company, that by itself is not enough. So you want to be looking for those keywords that are after it, and I would say 9 times out of 10, that's on there. So
okay, is there any possibility that when you said like Googling to see where your firm is, could it be wrong?
Yeah, there is a possibility, but it's that 1% possibility. It's that 1 out of 100. Most people do not work for 7 years of their life and devote 7 years of their life to become a CPA, to only turn around and forget to put it on their website. Accountants are, kind of almost notoriously bad in their marketing material sometimes. But if and it looks like sometimes they have a website designed from, the 1980s video game or something. But even then, the guys who get their designation generally put it on there.
Yeah.
So I would say, although it's possible, it's not likely. And I think clients expect the otherwise. They think they look at this website and it's like, oh, he must have just forgot it. It's like 99 times out of 100, he didn't forget it. he or she does not have that designation, and that's why it's not on the website and it's not front and center, because if you really devote that time and energy of your life, you're going to put it out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Another question that a bunch of clients could have, and I know when searching around, especially on Google or something, they would look and see, do CPAs always charge higher than a non-graduate accountant?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say when you look at it on an hour by hour basis, I suppose CPAs probably do charge more.
Yeah.
But that being said, the fee isn't always more. We've seen other undesignated accountants sometimes when the file comes into us that they get what I call lost in the weeds. So they didn't truly understand what was significant and what was of less significant. So even though they're, maybe billing at a lesser rate per hour, they're taking so much more time to do things that, don't matter, or can be done quickly, or can be estimated reasonably, or there's other means to find out the information. So it's not necessarily the case where just because they're undesignated, they're cheaper. Sometimes you're actually paying more because they just don't know how to do what they're doing efficiently, so they spend more time doing it. I tell people in my younger years, I once changed a transmission in a truck, and I think this is a long time ago when I had a lot more time. I think it took me a month, and I'm sure I could have brought that to an accountant, or I could have brought that to a mechanic, and he could have done it in a day.
Yeah.
But I eventually did it. It took me a month. Was that a cost-effective solution? No, not likely. So yeah, I think sometimes that's the case where it takes them longer because of that lack of training and because of that lack of experience.
Yeah. You touch base on that lack of experience and expertise. Do you believe that accountant's expertise has an effect on the amount of tax that you pay?
Yeah, I think it has a significant effect, right? And when you're looking at fees, I guess the question you need to ask yourself, I think Zig Ziglar said, is, are you concerned about price, or are you concerned about cost? Tax is the single biggest expense you're ever going to have in your lifetime, and as an entrepreneur, there's significant opportunities to save on that tax. So entrepreneurs really need to stop thinking about how much I pay on my accounting fees, and you almost aggregate it with how much am I paying on my accounting fees plus how much am I paying in tax. If you have a bad tax plan, which is extremely common from non-designated accountants, and let's say you're paying an extra $10,000 on tax, but you're saving $2,000 a year in your accounting fees, are you really ahead, or have I just actually paid $8,000 more? So you really need to think about that. It's likely that someone with more experience, if you're running a business, is actually going to be able to save you on tax, especially if you're an entrepreneur. So.
And what do you think is the most important thing when hiring an accountant?
Yeah, even beyond the price and the tax, ultimately it's the quality of information. You have to be able to trust that quality information, because as a business owner, you're investing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars on projects. And even if it's not a lot of money that you're investing, lots of people are investing sweat equity, and they're putting a year or 2 years of your life. Are you making business decisions based on information that's not reliable? In business, there's no reset button. It's not a video game. You can't go back. So you want to have the best information at hand to give yourself the best chance to succeed.
Makes sense.
Thanks very much, everybody. We hope to see your comments below and look forward to addressing any comments that you have in a future upcoming video. Thank you.